When I saw my wife's silver Honda parked outside my daughter's husband's house at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, my blood turned to ice. She was supposed to be at her book club meeting across town. She was supposed to be discussing romance novels with her friends. Not this. I crept closer to the living room window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. What I saw through that window made my knees buckle and my world collapse in a single, devastating moment. Before we continue with this story of betrayal and the revenge that followed, please hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what you think will happen next. Now, let's get back to the story. My name is Frank Morrison, and at 67 years old, I thought I knew everything there was to know about my family. I thought I understood the people I'd spent decades loving, supporting, and trusting with my whole heart. I was wrong about everything. It started on March 15, 2024, a Tuesday that began like any other day in my quiet retirement. My wife Evelyn had kissed my cheek at breakfast, told me she was meeting her book club at the library at 2 p.m., and reminded me to take my blood pressure medicine. Normal Tuesday stuff for a normal Tuesday marriage that had lasted 43 years. But something felt off that morning. Evelyn spent longer getting ready than usual, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on a dress I'd never seen before. A blue dress that made her look younger, prettier, more available. When I complimented her on it, she got flustered and spilled coffee on the kitchen counter. "Just trying something new," she mumbled, cleaning up the mess with more energy than spilled coffee usually required. I should have known then, should have trusted the little voice in my head that whispered something wasn't right. But after 43 years of marriage, you learn to ignore those little voices. You learn to trust instead of question. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was deciding to surprise our daughter Brianna at work. She'd been stressed lately about her job at the insurance company, and I thought maybe I'd swing by with her favorite coffee from Murphy's Deli. Be the supportive dad, you know? Show up when she needed me most. But when I got to her office building at 1:30 p.m., her coworker Janet told me something that made my stomach drop. "Oh, Frank, Brianna left early today. Said she had a family emergency and needed to get home to help her husband with something." Family emergency. At 1:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, the same time Evelyn was supposed to be at book club. I drove to Brianna's house with a sick feeling growing in my gut. She lived in Oakwood Heights, about 15 minutes from downtown, in a nice little house that her husband Garrett had inherited from his grandmother. I'd helped them fix it up when they first moved in 2 years ago. Painted the fence, fixed the leaky bathroom, installed new ceiling fans. The kind of stuff fathers do for their daughters and the men who marry them. The kind of stuff you do when you trust people. I pulled into the driveway at 2:15 p.m., my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Brianna's red Toyota was there. So was Garrett's black pickup truck. And there, parked on the street like it belonged there, was Evelyn's silver Honda Civic. My wife's car. At my daughter's house. During book club time, I sat in my truck for 2 full minutes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe Evelyn had stopped by to drop something off. Maybe the book club had been canceled and she decided to visit Brianna instead. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent reason for all of this. Maybe I was an old fool who didn't want to see what was right in front of me. I got out of the truck and walked slowly toward the house, each step feeling like I was walking toward my own execution. The front door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Low voices, intimate voices, the kind of voices people use when they think they're alone. I crept around to the side of the house, where the living room window looked out onto the small garden Brianna and I had planted last spring. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap at the bottom, just big enough for someone to see inside if they crouched down and looked up. So I crouched down, and I looked up, and I saw my wife of 43 years kissing my daughter's husband. Not a friendly peck on the cheek. Not a congratulations hug that went too long. Orealkish. A passionate, hungry, desperate kiss between 2 people who had clearly been doing this for a while. Evelyn's hands were in Garrett's hair. His hands were on her waist, pulling her closer. They moved together like dancers who knew each other's steps perfectly. I watched for maybe 30 seconds before I had to look away. 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. 30 seconds that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my family. I stumbled back to my truck, got inside, and sat there shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. My phone buzzed with a text message. From Evelyn. Book club is running late today. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. I stared at those words until they stopped making sense. Then I started my truck and drove home. My mind completely blank except for one terrible, crystal-clear thought. How long had this been going on? I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't even pretend to when Evelyn came home at 9:30 p.m., humming softly and smelling like someone else's cologne. She kissed my forehead and told me all about the wonderful discussion they'd had about the latest romance novel. You would have been bored to tears, she said with a laugh that sounded completely normal. Nothing but middle-aged women talking about love and passion and second chances. Seconde chance. The words hit me like a slap. Sounds interesting, I managed to say. What was the book about? She paused for just a second too long. Oh, older woman, younger man. The usual fantasy stuff. Older woman, younger man. Evelyn was 64. Garrett was 29. I spent the next 3 days living in a strange, horrible dream where everything looked normal on the surface but felt completely wrong underneath. Evelyn made my coffee every morning, chatted about the weather, reminded me about doctor appointments and grocery shopping. But I started noticing things I'd missed before. How she'd started dressing differently over the past few months. Brighter colors, more fitted clothes, perfume I didn't recognize. How she'd been taking more phone calls in the other room, always with the excuse that it was just Nancy from book club or Helen about the church fundraiser. How she'd started going to book club twice a week instead of once. How she'd bought a new phone last month and kept it locked with a password she said was for security. On Friday, March 18th, I did something I'd never done in 43 years of marriage. I followed my wife. She left the house at 1:45 p.m., telling me she was going grocery shopping and might stop by Brianna's afterward to drop off some leftovers. I waited 5 minutes, then got in my truck and drove to Oakwood Heights. Sure enough, her Honda was parked in the same spot on the street. But this time I was ready. I'd brought my old binoculars from my army days and parked 3 houses down where I could see everything. At 2:30 p.m., Garrett came out of the house and walked to Evelyn's car. He opened the passenger door like a gentleman, then leaned down and kissed her before she got in. Not a hello kiss, a welcome back lover kiss. They drove away together, and I followed at a distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. They went to Miller's Park, the same park where Evelyn and I used to take Brianna when she was little. They parked in the far corner, under the big oak tree where I taught my daughter how to throw a baseball 20 years ago. I watched through my binoculars as my wife and my son-in-law sat in her car, talking and laughing like teenagers. At one point, he reached over and touched her face, so gentle and tender it made me sick. She leaned into his touch like she was starving for it. They stayed there for an hour, just talking, holding hands, looking at each other like they discovered something wonderful and secret. When they finally kissed goodbye, it was soft and sweet and full of promises. I followed them back to Brianna's house, where Garrett got out and walked inside like nothing had happened. Evelyn sat in her car for a few minutes, touching her lips and smiling at herself in the rearview mirror. Then she drove to the grocery store, bought the ingredients for my favorite dinner, and came home to cook it for me. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, stirring the pot roast like she hadn't spent the afternoon with another man. "Quiet," I said, "just the way I like it." That night, while Evelyn slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how this had happened. How had my wife fallen in love with our daughter's husband? How had I missed it? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? Over the next week, I became a detective in my own life. I started paying attention to every detail, every conversation, every change in routine. What I found made me feel sick and stupid and angry all at the same time. The affair had been going on for at least 6 months, maybe longer. I figured this out by going through our credit card statements, something I'd never bothered to check before because I trusted Evelyn completely. But now, looking at the charges with suspicious eyes. I saw the pattern. Gas station purchases at weird times and places. Coffee shops in parts of town we never went to. Hotel charges that Evelyn had explained as spa days with the girls. Expensive dinners at restaurants on days when she told me she was eating with her book club. The most damning evidence was a charge for $200 at Victoria's Secret on February 14th. Valentine's Day. I'd given Evelyn flowers and taken her to Applebee's that night. Apparently, someone else had gotten the expensive lingerie. I started checking her phone when she was in the shower, but she'd gotten smart about deleting messages. Still, I found a few things that made my heart break into 1,000 pieces. A text from someone saved in her contacts as Book Club Helen that said, "Can't wait to hold you again." Another one that said, "You looked beautiful today. Frank is lucky to have you, even if he doesn't appreciate you the way I do." And the one that nearly made me throw the phone across the room. "I love you more than I ever thought possible. We need to tell them soon. Tell them soon. Tell me and Brianna that they were having an affair, that they were in love, that our family was about to explode into a million pieces." I put the phone back exactly where I found it and went to sit on the back porch, my hands shaking with rage and heartbreak. 43 years. 43 years of marriage, of building a life together, of raising our daughter, of planning for retirement and grandchildren and growing old together. All of it meant nothing compared to whatever she felt for Garrett. But it wasn't just Evelyn who was betraying me. It was him too. Garrett, who'd married my daughter 2 years ago in a beautiful ceremony where I'd walked Brianna down the aisle and welcomed him into our family. Garrett, who called me Pops and asked for my advice about job interviews and lawn care. Garrett, who'd helped me move furniture when my back was acting up and who always remembered to ask about my doctor appointments. Garrett, who was sleeping with my wife behind my daughter's back. That thought hit me like a freight train. Brianna, my sweet, trusting daughter who had no idea that her husband was cheating on her with her own mother. I had to tell her. But how do you tell your child something like that? How do you destroy her world with information that would change everything forever? On March 28th, I decided to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went. I needed to know if Brianna suspected anything, if she was as blind to this as I had been, or if she was somehow part of it. I called her at work and asked if she wanted to meet for lunch. Just the two of us, father and daughter time. She sounded surprised but happy to hear from me. "Is everything okay, Dad? You sound a little strange." "Everything's fine, sweetheart. I just miss spending time with you." We met at Murphy's Deli at noon, the same place I'd been planning to buy her coffee the day I discovered the affair. She looked tired, stressed, older than her 31 years. "Work's been crazy," she said, stirring sugar into her iced tea. "And Garrett's been, I don't know, distant lately, distracted. He says it's just work stuff, but..." She trailed off, looking out the window with worry in her eyes. "But what?" I asked gently. "I think he might be having problems at the construction company. He's been leaving work early a lot, says he has meetings or appointments, but when I ask about it, he gets all weird and changes the subject." She looked back at me with tears starting to form. "Dad, do you think he might be looking for another job and not telling me? I know money's been tight, but I thought we were handling it okay." My heart broke for her. My innocent, trusting daughter was making up reasons to explain her husband's strange behavior because the real reason was too horrible to consider. "Has he seemed happier lately?" I asked carefully. "Like maybe he's excited about something?" She nodded, looking confused. "Yeah, actually. Some days he comes home practically glowing. He's more affectionate, brings me flowers for no reason, talks about taking trips and making changes in our lives." I thought maybe he was finally getting over the stress, but now I'm wondering if he got some kind of job offer he's not ready to tell me about yet. Job offer. If only it were that simple. "And how are things with you and Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "She mentioned she's been spending more time with you lately." Brianna's face scrunched up in confusion. "With me, Dad? I barely see Mom anymore. She used to call me every few days, but now it's maybe once a week. And she's always rushing off the phone. Says she has book club or volunteer work or something." I actually asked Garrett if he thought she was mad at me about something. The lies were everywhere. Evelyn was telling me she was spending time with Brianna, and telling Brianna she was too busy to spend time with her. Also, she could spend her time with Garrett. What did Garrett say about that? He said not to worry about it. That Mom was probably just going through some kind of phase and would come around eventually. He's probably right, but it still hurts, you know? I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're a good daughter, Brianna. Don't ever doubt that. She smiled, but I could see the worry still there in her eyes. Worry about her marriage, about her relationship with her mother, about changes she could sense but couldn't understand. If she only knew the truth, all her worries would make perfect sense. But telling her would destroy her, and I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. First, I needed a plan. That night, I sat in my home office and started writing down everything I knew. Dates, times, places, evidence. I organized it like the business reports I used to write before I retired from the accounting firm. March 15th, discovered Evelyn and Garrett kissing at Brianna's house during supposed book club meeting. March 18th, followed them to Miller's Park. Observed intimate behavior. February 14th, Victoria's Secret charge on credit card. January through March, multiple suspicious charges for hotels, restaurants, gas stations. Pattern of lies about book club meetings, time with Brianna, and daily activities. Text messages indicating long-term romantic relationship and plans to tell them soon. As I wrote it all down, the scope of the betrayal became clear. This wasn't just a physical affair. They were in love. They were planning a future together. And that future clearly involved destroying my marriage and Brianna's. I thought about confronting them directly, walking into Brianna's house the next time I saw Evelyn's car there and demanding an explanation. But that would only give them a chance to lie, to make excuses, to turn it around and make me look like the crazy, suspicious old man. No, I needed something better. Something that would expose the truth in a way they couldn't deny or explain away. Over the next few days, I started planning something I'd never thought I was capable of. Not revenge, exactly. More like justice. They'd been living a lie at my expense and Brianna's expense. It was time for everyone to see the truth. The first step was documentation. I needed better evidence than my own testimony and a few suspicious text messages. I needed proof that would be impossible to deny. I went to Best Buy and bought a small digital camera with a good zoom lens. The kid at the store probably thought I was planning to take pictures of birds or something. If only he knew. On April 3rd, I followed them again. This time, instead of just watching, I took pictures. Lots of pictures. Garrett getting into Evelyn's car at 2:15 p.m. Them holding hands while walking through Valley View Mall. Evelyn trying on clothes while Garrett waited outside the dressing room like a devoted boyfriend. Them sharing a piece of cake at the coffee shop in the mall. Feeding each other with their forks. Garrett buying Evelyn a necklace at the jewelry store. Fastening it around her neck right there in front of everyone. Them making out in the parking lot like teenagers before driving back to Brianna's house. Each photo was like a knife in my heart, but I kept taking them. By the end of the afternoon, I had over 50 pictures that told the whole story of their afternoon date. But I needed more than just one afternoon. I needed to show that this was an ongoing relationship, not just a one-time mistake. Over the next 2 weeks, I followed them 3 more times. Each time, I got more evidence. More photos, more documentation of their lies and betrayals. April 8th, hotel visit during supposed doctor's appointment for Evelyn. April 12th, lunch at Romano's Italian restaurant during Garrett's supposed work meeting. April 15th, shopping trip to buy luggage at Macy's during Brianna's work hours. Luggage. That one hit me hard. They were planning to travel together. Maybe planning to run away together. On April 16th, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to expose them, but not in some ugly confrontation that would just hurt everyone involved. I was going to do it smart, clean, and completely devastating. I was going to wait until the perfect moment and show everyone exactly what kind of people they really were. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. On April 20th, Brianna called me with exciting news. Dad, Garrett and I want to have a family dinner this Sunday. Nothing fancy, just the four of us. Garrett's been talking about how important family is, and he wants to cook for everyone. Isn't that sweet? Sweet. That's one word for it. He wants to cook? Since when does Garrett cook? I know, right? But he's been watching cooking shows and says he wants to try making this special pasta dish he saw. He's really excited about it. Can you and Mom come over around 6 o'clock? Family dinner. The four of us sitting around the table while Garrett played the loving husband and Evelyn played the devoted mother and grandmother-to-be. While I sat there knowing exactly what they'd been doing behind our backs. We'll be there, I said. Sounds perfect. And it was perfect. Perfect for what I had planned. I spent the next few days preparing. First, I got all my photos printed at the Photoshop, high-quality prints that showed every detail clearly. Then I organized them into a timeline, with dates and locations written on the back of each one. I also did something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. My neighbor Pete had mentioned using one during his own messy divorce 3 years back. Guy named Ray Martinez. Pete had told me over the fence one day. Retired Spokane PD, knows his stuff. Helped me nail down everything I needed. I'd never thought I'd need that information, but life has a funny way of surprising you. His name was Detective Ray Martinez, a retired cop who now did private investigation work. I found his business card in Pete's kitchen drawer when he let me borrow it, and met him at a coffee shop downtown on April 22nd. Mr. Morrison, he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Tell me what's going on. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, showing him some of the photos I'd taken. He looked through them without expression, then looked up at me with sympathy in his eyes. How long has this been going on? At least 6 months. Maybe longer. And you want me to do what exactly? I want you to be at my daughter's house on Sunday evening with professional equipment. Hidden cameras, recording devices, whatever you need. I'm going to confront them during dinner, and I want everything documented. Video, audio, everything. He leaned back in his chair, studying my face. Mr. Morrison, I have to ask, are you sure this is how you want to handle this? Confronting them in front of your daughter might be devastating. Finished. Detective Martinez, they're planning to tell us soon anyway. I've seen the text messages. They're going to destroy my daughter's marriage and my marriage on their timeline, in their way, with their spin on the story. I'd rather she hear the truth from me than lies from them. He nodded slowly. Okay, I can do what you're asking, but you need to be prepared for the fallout. This kind of thing, it changes everything for everyone involved. Everything already changed, I said quietly. I'm just making sure everyone else knows it. On Sunday morning, I got up early and made breakfast for Evelyn like I had every weekend for 43 years. She chatted about her plans for the day, mentioned she might run some errands before dinner, asked if I needed anything from the store. Such a caring wife, such a devoted mother, such a talented liar. Actually, I said, I think I'll come with you on your errands today. We don't spend enough time together anymore. The fork froze halfway to her mouth. Oh, well, I was just gonna run boring stuff. Grocery store, dry cleaner. Nothing interesting. I don't mind. It's a beautiful day for a drive. She recovered quickly, smiling and nodding like it was a great idea. But I could see the panic in her eyes. Her afternoon plans with Garrett would have to be canceled. You know what? She said after a moment. Maybe I'll just skip the errands today. We can spend time together here instead. Whatever you want, honey. She excused herself to make a phone call, probably to warn Garrett that their plans had changed. I sat at the kitchen table, finishing my coffee and listening to her whispered conversation in the next room. When she came back, she was all smiles again. I decided you're right. We should spend more time together. Want to work in the garden today? That sounds perfect. We spent the day gardening, talking about normal married couple things like fertilizer and sprinkler systems and which flowers to plant this year. It felt almost like the old days before the lies and betrayal, except now I knew it was all fake. She was playing the role of happy wife while counting the hours until she could see her lover again. At 5:30 p.m., we got dressed for dinner. Evelyn chose her outfit carefully. The same blue dress she'd worn that first day I discovered the affair. The dress that made her look younger, prettier, more available. The dress she'd worn for him. "You look beautiful," I told her, and meant it. She did look beautiful. That was part of what made this so painful. "Thank you, honey. You look handsome too." We drove to Brianna's house together, making small talk about the weather and traffic. Normal couple conversation that felt like acting in a play where I was the only one who knew how it was going to end. Detective Martinez was already in position, parked down the street in an unmarked van with tinted windows. He'd arrived an hour early to set up his equipment and get video of Evelyn and me arriving together. Everything was ready. After 43 years of marriage and 6 months of betrayal, it was time for the truth. Brianna met us at the door with a huge smile and a hug for both of us. She looked beautiful in a yellow sundress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail like she used to wear when she was little. "You guys are right on time." Garrett's in the kitchen putting the finishing touches on dinner. He's been cooking all afternoon. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the house, making my stomach rumble despite my nerves. Whatever else Garrett was, apparently he really could cook. "Something smells incredible," Evelyn said, hanging up her purse and smoothing her dress. "Where did he learn to make Italian food?" "YouTube, if you can believe it," Brianna laughed. "He's been watching cooking videos for weeks. Said he wanted to make something special for family dinner." Special, right? Garrett appeared in the doorway to the kitchen, wearing an apron over his good jeans and button-down shirt. He looked nervous but happy, like a man who was about to accomplish something important. "Pops, Mrs. M." He came over and gave me a firm handshake, then hugged Evelyn just a little too long. "I hope you guys are hungry. I made enough food to feed an army." "We can't wait," I said, watching his face carefully. "It's nice to see you putting so much effort into family time." Something flickered in his eyes, but he recovered quickly. "Family's important. The most important thing, really." We sat down in the living room while Garrett finished up in the kitchen. Brianna chattered about work and her plans for redecorating the spare bedroom. Evelyn complimented her on the new curtains and asked about her garden. Normal family conversation, if you didn't know that 2 of the 4 people in the room were sleeping together. "Dinner's ready," Garrett called from the dining room. He'd really gone all out. The table was set with the good china, candles were lit, and there was a beautiful centerpiece of flowers from Brianna's garden. The pasta dish looked like something from a restaurant, layers of noodles, sauce, cheese, and herbs that made my mouth water despite everything. "This looks amazing, honey," Brianna said, kissing Garrett's cheek as he pulled out her chair. "You really outdid yourself." He beamed with pride, then helped seat Evelyn and me like the perfect gentleman. For a moment, I almost forgot what I was there to do. He seemed so genuinely happy to be hosting us, so proud of the meal he'd prepared. But then I caught the look that passed between him and Evelyn when they thought no one was watching. A quick glance full of longing and secrets that reminded me exactly why we were really here. The food was delicious. Garrett had really learned how to cook, and we all praised him enthusiastically between bites of the best homemade pasta I'd ever tasted. "So," Brianna said, twirling noodles on her fork, "I have some exciting news to share with everyone." My stomach clenched. "Please don't let her be pregnant. Please don't let there be a baby involved in this mess." "What's your news, sweetheart?" Evelyn asked. "Well, you know how I've been worried about Garrett being distant lately? Turns out I was wrong to worry." She reached over and took his hand, smiling at him with pure love. "He hasn't been pulling away from me at all. He's been planning something special." Garrett shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Brianna, maybe we should." "No, I want to tell them. Garrett's been saving money for months to surprise me with a second honeymoon. We're going to Italy in June. He's been taking all those cooking classes online because he wants us to be able to cook Italian food together when we get back." The silence that followed was deafening. Brianna looked around the table with excitement, waiting for our reactions. Garrett looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Evelyn had gone pale, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "Italy," I said slowly. "That's Interesting timing. I know, right? Brianna was bubbling with happiness. Garrett said he wanted to do something to show me how much our marriage means to him. That family is the most important thing in the world, and he never wants to take it for granted. I looked at Garrett, who was staring at his plate like it might save him from this conversation. That's a very thoughtful gesture, Garrett. Very committed of you. Dad, you sound weird, Brianna said, her smile faltering slightly. Are you okay? This was it. The moment I'd been planning for weeks. The moment that would change everything for all of us. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared. Actually, sweetheart, there's something I need to show everyone. Evelyn's eyes went wide when she saw the envelope. Garrett's face went from pale to green. Frank, Evelyn said quietly. What's in that envelope? The truth, I said simply, and opened it up. I started with the photos from March 15th. The first ones I'd taken, showing Evelyn and Garrett kissing in Brianna's living room. I placed them on the table next to the pasta, face up where everyone could see them clearly. Brianna's fork clattered to her plate. What is this? March 15th, 2:30 p.m., I said, my voice steady despite the way my hands were shaking. Your mother was supposed to be at book club. Your husband was supposed to be at work. Instead, they were here in your house doing this. Frank, stop, Evelyn whispered, her face crumpling. Please don't do this. But I was already laying out more photos. April 3rd at the mall. April 8th at the hotel. April 12th at the restaurant. Each photo told part of the story, but together they told the whole ugly truth. 6 months, I said, looking directly at Garrett. At least 6 months you've been having an affair with my wife. In my daughter's house. While she's at work. Trusting you. Loving you. Planning a future with you. Brianna was staring at the photos like they were written in a foreign language she couldn't understand. These aren't. Mom, tell him these are fake. Evelyn was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Brianna, honey, I can explain. Explain what? I pulled out the credit card statements, the hotel receipts, the text messages I'd managed to screenshot. Explain the Victoria's Secret charge on Valentine's Day? Explain the hotel bills? Explain the text message where you told him you loved him and needed to tell us soon. Dad, stop, Brianna whispered. But her eyes were fixed on the evidence spread across the table. Evidence that made her husband's distant behavior, her mother's reduced phone calls, and all the little changes she'd noticed suddenly make horrible sense. Garrett finally found his voice. Brianna, we never meant for this to happen. She looked at him like she'd never seen him before. You're talking about this like it's something that happened to you instead of something you chose to do. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Evelyn said through her tears. It started so innocent. I was feeling lonely after you moved out, and Garrett was having problems at work, and we started talking. Talking, I repeated. Is that what they're calling it now? Frank, please. Evelyn reached for my hand, but I pulled away. You don't understand. Our marriage, it's been over for years. We've been like roommates, not husband and wife. Garrett makes me feel alive again. Makes me feel like a woman instead of just your caretaker. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice level. So instead of talking to me about problems in our marriage, you decided to solve them by sleeping with our daughter's husband. I love him, she said simply, like that explained everything. I know it's wrong. I know it's complicated, but I love him and he loves me. Brianna made a sound like a wounded animal. Mom, how could you? He's my husband. He's my husband. I know, baby, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Brianna stood up so fast her chair fell over. You're sorry? You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my family. You've been lying to my face for months, and you're sorry. She turned to Garrett, who was still sitting there like a statue. And you've been sleeping with my mother while planning a second honeymoon with me? What were you going to do? Take her to Italy instead? The trip was real, he said quietly. I do want to work on our marriage. Our marriage. Brianna laughed, but it sounded more like screaming. What marriage? You've been having sex with my mother. There is no marriage left to work on. Brianna, please. Evelyn stood up and reached for her daughter. But Brianna stepped back like she was radioactive. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. I watched my daughter's world collapse in real time, and even though I'd known this was necessary, it still broke my heart to see her pain. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, sweetheart, I said gently. But they were planning to tell us soon anyway. I thought it would be better coming from me than from them with whatever story they'd made up to make themselves look better. Get out, Brianna said, her voice deadly quiet. Both of you, get out of my house right now. Brianna. Garrett started to stand up. Sit down, she screamed. You don't get to move. You don't get to talk. You don't get to do anything except sit there and think about what you've done. She turned back to Evelyn, who was sobbing into her hands. You have 10 seconds to get out of my house before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. Baby, please let me explain. 1, 2, 3. Evelyn grabbed her purse and ran for the door, her sobs echoing through the house. I could hear her car starting up outside, then speeding away into the night. Brianna turned to me, her eyes red with tears but her voice steady. Dad, I'm sorry you had to be the one to tell me. I know this must have been horrible for you too. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. How long have you known? Since March 15th. I came by to surprise you with coffee and saw your mom's car. I looked through the window and I gestured at the photos still scattered across the dinner table. She picked up one of them, the one showing Evelyn and Garrett kissing in her living room. In my house. They were doing this in my house while I was at work. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. She crumpled up the photo and threw it at Garrett, who hadn't moved or spoken since her outburst. How many times? How many times did you bring her into our house, into our bed, while I was working to pay our bills? It wasn't. We never used your bed, he said quietly. Oh, well, that makes it so much better, she said sarcastically. Thank you for that small mercy. At least you limited your betrayal to the living room and kitchen. I gathered up the rest of the photos and documents, putting them back in the envelope. My work here was done. The truth was out, and now everyone would have to deal with the consequences. I'm going to go, I said, standing up slowly. Brianna, if you need anything at all, you call me. She hugged me tight, and I could feel her shaking with anger and heartbreak. I love you, Dad. Thank you for telling me. I know it couldn't have been easy. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. I left them there in the dining room, Brianna standing over the wreckage of what was supposed to be a perfect family dinner. Garrett still sitting at the table staring at his hands. As I walked to my truck, I could see Detective Martinez's van pulling away from the curb. He'd gotten everything on camera, just like we'd planned. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. When I pulled into my driveway, Evelyn's car was already there, and I could see her silhouette in the living room window. She was sitting on the couch, probably planning what she was going to say to me. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, gathering my strength for the conversation I'd been avoiding for weeks. Then I walked into my house to face my wife of 43 years. Evelyn was sitting in her usual spot on the couch, but she looked different. Smaller somehow. Older. The confident woman who'd been living a double life for months had been replaced by someone who looked broken and defeated. Frank, she said as I walked in. We need to talk. Now you want to talk, I said, hanging my coat on the hook by the door. 6 months ago would have been a better time for that conversation. I know you're angry. Angry? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Evelyn, angry doesn't even begin to cover what I'm feeling right now. I sat down in my recliner, the one I'd bought last year when my back started acting up. It felt strange to be having this conversation in our living room, surrounded by 43 years of shared memories and shared lies. How long? I asked. And don't lie to me anymore. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime. She was quiet for a long moment, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. The same ring I'd saved up for 3 months to buy when we got engaged in 1981. It started in October, she said finally. Brianna asked me to check on Garrett when he was sick with the flu. She was working late and couldn't get home, so I brought him soup and medicine. October. 7 months, not 6. Even longer than I'd thought. And you decided that was a good time to seduce our daughter's husband. It wasn't like that. Her voice flared with anger, then settled back into defeat. He was so grateful, so sweet. We just started talking. About life, about feeling unappreciated, about dreams we'd given up. It was innocent at first. When did it stop being innocent? November 18th. The date came out like a confession. Brianna was working late again, and Garrett called me crying. He'd had a fight with his boss. Thought he was going to lose his job. I went over to comfort him, and it just happened. November 18th. I remembered that night. Evelyn had come home late, said she'd been helping Brianna with something. I'd been watching the news, barely looked up when she kissed my forehead and went to bed. So you've been lying to me for 7 months. Frank, you have to understand. Our marriage. When was the last time you really looked at me? Really talked to me about something other than doctor appointments and grocery lists? I stared at her, feeling something cold settle in my chest. So this is my fault. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that because I became too comfortable in our marriage, because I stopped acting like a lovesick teenager after 4 decades together, that gave you the right to cheat on me with our son-in-law. You don't understand what it's like, she said, tears starting again. Feeling invisible. Feeling like you're just furniture in your own life.
Karetseesme.
He appreciates me. He makes me feel beautiful and desired and important. And destroying our daughter's marriage was worth feeling pretty again? She flinched like I'd slapped her. I never wanted to hurt Brianna. That was never the plan. What was the plan, Evelyn? What was the endgame here? For the first time since I'd walked in, she looked directly at me. We were going to leave. Together. Garrett was going to ask Brianna for a divorce and I was going to ask you for one. We were going to start over somewhere new, where nobody knew us. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. They'd been planning to destroy both marriages, leave both of us, and run away together like teenagers. When? After the Italy trip. Garrett thought if he could take Brianna on a nice vacation, be the perfect husband for 2 weeks, it would help her handle the divorce better. Make her think it was about him needing space, not about us. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They'd planned to let Brianna have one last perfect trip with her husband before he destroyed her life. Like a final meal before an execution. And what about me? What was I supposed to think when my wife of 43 years suddenly asked for a divorce? I thought maybe you'd be relieved. We've been so distant lately, Frank. More like roommates than spouses. Maybe you'd be happier without me. I stood up and walked to the mantel, where our wedding photo sat next to pictures of Brianna at various stages of growing up. Young Evelyn smiled back at me from the photo, radiant in her white dress, full of hope and love and promises. Do you love him? I asked without turning around. Yes. The simple honesty of it was worse than any lie would have been. More than you ever loved me? Different than I loved you. You and I, we grew up together, built a life together. It was comfortable, stable, predictable. With Garrett, it's passionate, exciting. He makes me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten I could feel. I turned back to face her. So our whole marriage, raising Brianna, building this life, buying this house, planning for retirement together, all of that was just comfortable and stable? Nothing passionate or exciting about any of it. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You're telling me that 43 years of marriage was just settling. And now you've found something better. She was crying again, but I felt no urge to comfort her. The woman sitting on my couch was a stranger who looked like my wife. What do you want me to say, Frank? That I'm sorry? I am sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I hurt Brianna. I'm sorry it happened this way. But I can't be sorry for finding love again. I can't be sorry for feeling happy. Happy? I repeated. You're happy. I was. Before tonight. Before you decided to destroy everything instead of just talking to me like an adult. The accusation in her voice made my temper flare. I decided to destroy everything? Evelyn, you destroyed everything the first time you kissed him. I just made sure everyone knew about it. You could have come to me privately. We could have worked something out, handled this like civilized people. Worked something out? Like what? Shared custody of our daughter's husband. You're being ridiculous. I'm being honest. Something you might want to try. We stared at each other across the living room that had been our shared space for so many years. I could see the exact moment she gave up trying to make me understand, when her face hardened into the expression of someone who'd made her choice and was done explaining it. I'm leaving, she said, standing up and smoothing her dress. The blue dress she'd worn for him. Tonight. Yes, I've already packed a bag. It's in the car. Of course she had. She'd probably packed it this morning, planning to leave after the family dinner whether I confronted them or not. Maybe the confrontation had just given her an excuse to leave sooner. Where are you going? There's a hotel downtown that does weekly rates. Garrett found us a place until we can figure out something more permanent. Maybe find jobs in another city where people don't know our business. And Brianna? Brianna will understand eventually. When she's older, when she's been married longer, she'll understand that sometimes love doesn't follow the rules we think it should. I almost laughed at the delusion. You think our daughter is going to understand why her mother stole her husband? You think she's going to forgive either of you? She'll have to. We're family. You stopped being family the day you decided Garrett was more important than she was. Evelyn picked up her purse and walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. Frank, I do love you. I'll always love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore, and I haven't been for a long time. We both deserve better than living like strangers in the same house. Maybe, I said, but we deserved better than this too. She nodded, tears falling again. I'm sorry it ended this way. I really am. So am I. She walked out the door, and I heard her car start up and drive away. After 43 years of marriage, it ended with the sound of an engine fading into the distance. I sat back down in my recliner and looked around the empty house. Tomorrow, I'd have to start figuring out lawyers and divorce papers and how to divide up a lifetime of shared possessions. Tomorrow, I'd have to help Brianna through her own divorce and the worst betrayal she'd ever experienced. But tonight, I just sat in the quiet house and mourned the death of the family I'd thought we were. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and phone calls. Evelyn moved in with Garrett at a hotel downtown while Brianna filed for divorce. I filed for divorce too, something I never thought I'd do at 67 years old. The whole thing became public pretty quickly. In a town the size of Spokane, news like this spreads fast. The story of the grandmother who ran off with her son-in-law made the rounds at coffee shops and church gatherings and neighborhood barbecues. Some people were sympathetic. Others were judgmental. Most were just shocked that something like this could happen to people they knew. Detective Martinez gave me copies of all the footage he'd taken during the family dinner confrontation. Watching it back was painful, but it also confirmed that I'd done the right thing. Seeing Brianna's face as she realized the truth, seeing the devastation and betrayal in her eyes, reminded me why the truth had been necessary. They'd been planning to lie to her for 2 more months. Let her plan and pay for a romantic trip to Italy with a husband who was already emotionally gone. The confrontation had been brutal, but it had been honest. Brianna moved back in with me temporarily while she figured out her next steps. Having her in the house helped both of us deal with the loneliness and anger. We cooked dinner together, watched old movies, and talked through the complicated feelings that came with having your family destroyed by the people you trusted most. She also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarachin, twice a week to work through the trauma and betrayal. Slowly, I watched my daughter begin to heal and find her strength again. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, she said one evening as we sat on the back porch. The way he'd get texts and step outside to answer them. How he started working out more, buying new clothes. The way Mom stopped calling me as often. You trusted them, I said. That's what family members do. You're not supposed to have to be a detective in your own life. But I feel so stupid, Dad. So blind. You feel betrayed. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Do you think they're happy? She asked. Do you think it was worth it to them? I'd been wondering the same thing. From what I'd heard through mutual friends, Evelyn and Garrett were still together but struggling. The reality of their situation, two people who'd destroyed their families for love, was apparently less romantic than they'd imagined. I think they're finding out that happiness built on other people's pain doesn't last very long, I said. Good, she said firmly. I hope they're miserable. I understood the anger. I felt it too. But I also felt something else, relief. Relief that I no longer had to pretend everything was fine in my marriage. Relief that I no longer had to wonder why my wife seemed distant and distracted. Relief that I could stop living a lie, even if the truth was painful. On May 15th, exactly 2 months after I'd discovered the affair, I got a phone call that changed everything. Mr. Morrison? This is Jennifer Walsh from Walsh, Martinez and Associates. I'm representing your wife in the divorce proceedings. Okay, I said, settling into my office chair. What can I do for you? Mrs. Morrison would like to discuss a settlement. She's prepared to be very generous in exchange for a quick, quiet divorce. Generous. After what she'd done, she wanted to buy her way out cleanly. What kind of generous? She's willing to sign over the house to you completely. It's appraised at $340,000. You'd also get your full half of the joint savings account, which is about $95,000. She's asking for no alimony and wants to cover all legal fees for both parties. It was a good offer, better than I'd expected. The house alone was worth more than my half of everything combined. But there was something in the lawyer's tone that made me suspicious. What's the catch? She'd like you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. No talking to the media, no public statements about the circumstances of the divorce, no sharing of private information about the marriage. There it was. She wanted to buy my silence. She's worried about her reputation. Mr. Morrison, my client has started a new relationship and would prefer to move forward without complications from the past. New relationship, like what she had with Garrett, was a fresh start instead of an affair that had destroyed 2 families. I'll need to think about it. Of course, but I should mention that the offer is time-sensitive. If we can't reach an agreement by June 1st, my client may need to reconsider the terms. A threat wrapped in legal language. Sign the NDA and take the money, or she'd fight me for every penny in a long, expensive court battle. I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, thinking. The smart financial move was to take the deal. The house was worth more than my half of the savings, and avoiding legal fees would save me thousands of dollars. But there was something about the whole thing that bothered me. She wanted to buy her way to a clean slate, erase the consequences of her choices with money and legal agreements. That didn't seem like justice to me. I called Brianna and told her about the offer. Take it, Dad, she said immediately. Take the money and the house and never talk to her again. Don't let her drag this out any longer than necessary. Are you sure? I'm sure. She's already taken enough from both of us. Don't let her take any more. That evening, I called Jennifer Walsh back and accepted the settlement offer. But I had one condition of my own. I want a meeting with your client before I sign anything. Face to face. Mr. Morrison, I don't think that's advisable. It's not negotiable. She wants a clean divorce and a signed NDA. She can explain to me in person why she thinks she deserves either one. There was a long pause. I'll discuss it with my client and get back to you. 2 days later, I got a call setting up a meeting for May 20th at Jennifer Walsh's office downtown. Neutral territory with lawyers present, but still the face-to-face conversation I demanded. I spent those 2 days thinking about what I wanted to say to the woman who'd been my wife for 43 years and my betrayer for 7 months. In the end, I decided that mostly I just wanted to look her in the eyes one more time and see if there was any trace left of the person I'd married. Jennifer Walsh's law office was in one of the newer buildings downtown, all glass and steel and modern furniture that probably cost more than my truck. I arrived 10 minutes early and spent the time looking out the window at the city I'd called home for most of my adult life. Evelyn arrived exactly on time, looking like she was dressed for a job interview. Conservative blue suit, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She was trying to look respectable, professional, nothing like the woman in the photos I'd taken of her holding hands with our son-in-law. "Frank," she said quietly as she took the seat across from me at the conference table. "Evelyn." Jennifer Walsh shuffled papers and cleared her throat. "Mr. Morrison, you requested this meeting to discuss the settlement terms. My client has agreed to the generous offer I outlined, contingent on your signature on the non-disclosure agreement." "I understand the terms," I said, not taking my eyes off Evelyn. "I want to know why you think you deserve a clean slate." "Frank, please don't make this harder than it has to be," Evelyn said. "Harder than it has to be? You destroyed our daughter's marriage and ended our marriage for an affair. And you think I'm making it hard by asking questions?" Jennifer Walsh held up a hand. "Mr. Morrison, perhaps we could focus on the legal matters at hand." "The legal matters are simple," I said. "Your client cheated on me with our son-in-law for 7 months, then abandoned both her marriage and her daughter to play house with a man 15 years younger than her. Now she wants to pay me to keep quiet about it so she can start fresh without any messy consequences." Evelyn's face flushed red. "That's not. It's more complicated than that." "Is it? Because from where I sit, it looks pretty simple. You chose him over your family, and now you want to make that choice disappear with money and legal documents." "I chose love," she said, her voice getting stronger. "I chose feeling alive again instead of slowly dying in a marriage that stopped working years ago. And how's that working out for you?" For the first time since she'd walked in, she looked uncertain. "What do you mean? I mean, are you happy, Evelyn? Are you and Garrett living the passionate love story you destroyed 2 families for?" She glanced at her lawyer, then back at me. We're working through some challenges." "Challenges?" "It's not easy starting over. People judge us. Friends have taken sides. Garrett's having trouble finding work because word got around about what happened. It's been more difficult than we expected." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "So you're finding out that actions have consequences." "We knew there would be consequences. We accepted that when we decided to be together." "Did you? Because asking me to sign an NDA so nobody can talk about what you did doesn't sound like accepting consequences. It sounds like trying to avoid them." Jennifer Walsh jumped in. "Mr. Morrison, the non-disclosure agreement is a standard part of many divorce settlements. It protects both parties from unwanted publicity. It protects your client from people knowing what kind of person she really is." I interrupted. "And I'm not interested in helping her do that." Evelyn leaned forward. "Frank, I know you're angry. I know I hurt you. But signing this agreement doesn't hurt you in any way. You get the house, you get your share of our savings, you never have to see me again. All I'm asking is that you don't make our private business public. Your private business stopped being private the day you involved our daughter's husband." "This isn't just about me," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "It's about Garrett too. He's trying to rebuild his life, find a new job, move forward. If this story keeps following us around, then maybe you should have thought about that before you started the affair." We stared at each other across the conference table. 2 people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now negotiating the terms of our mutual destruction. "What do you want, Frank?" she asked finally. "What would it take for you to sign the agreement?" I thought about it for a long moment. What did I want? I wanted my marriage back, but that was impossible. I wanted my family back, but Evelyn and Garrett had destroyed that forever. I wanted the last 7 months to have never happened, but time only moved in one direction. "I want you to call Brianna," I said finally. "I want you to apologize to her, really apologize, not some bullshit about how she'll understand when she's older. I want you to take full responsibility for what you did to her marriage and her family." "Frank, that's my condition. You call our daughter, you tell her you're sorry for choosing your own happiness over hers, and you promise her you'll stay out of her life until she's ready to have you in it. If she's ever ready." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She won't talk to me. She hangs up every time I call. Then you leave her voicemails until she listens to one. You write her letters. You do whatever it takes to reach her and make a real apology. And if I do that, you'll sign the agreement? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with, who'd thrown it all away for a chance to feel young again. If you do that and mean it, I'll consider it. Jennifer Walsh looked relieved. So we can move forward with? I said I'd consider it. I didn't say I'd do it. Evelyn stared at me. What does that mean? It means you apologize to Brianna because it's the right thing to do, not because it gets you what you want from me. And then I'll decide whether or not to sign your NDA based on whether I think you've earned the right to a clean slate. That's not how negotiations work, Mr. Morrison, Jennifer Walsh said stiffly. I'm not negotiating. I'm telling you what my condition is. Take it or leave it. I stood up and walked toward the door. You have my number. Call me when you've talked to Brianna. As I reached the door, Evelyn called out. Frank, wait. I turned back to her. Do you hate me? I looked at her sitting there in her professional outfit, trying so hard to look respectable and in control, and I realized something that surprised me. No, I said honestly. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in you. I'm angry at the choices you made. But I don't hate you. Then why won't you just sign the agreement and let us both move on? Because moving on and pretending it never happened are two different things. And I think there's a difference between forgiveness and enabling. I left her sitting there with her lawyer and her legal documents, and drove home to the house that would soon be mine alone. Brianna called me 3 days later, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Dad, Mom called me. She actually apologized. Really apologized. What did she say? She said she was sorry for choosing her own happiness over mine, that she was sorry for lying to me, for betraying my trust, for destroying my marriage. She said she knew I might never forgive her, but she wanted me to know that she understands why. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. How do you feel about that? I don't know.
Angry, sad, confused.
But also, maybe a little bit better? Like at least she finally admitted what she did was wrong instead of trying to justify it. That's something. She asked if she could see me, just once, to apologize in person. I told her I wasn't ready, but maybe someday. That's okay too. You don't have to forgive her on her timeline. Dad, are you going to sign that agreement thing? I've been thinking about it for 3 days. Evelyn had kept her part of the bargain. She'd called Brianna and made a real apology, not the self-serving justifications she'd been offering before. She'd acknowledged the damage she'd done and accepted that Brianna might never forgive her. It was more than I'd expected, honestly. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Really? Why? Because holding on to anger is exhausting, and I'm too old to spend the rest of my life being bitter. Your mom made terrible choices, but she's still a human being who deserves a chance to try to rebuild her life. Even after everything she did? Especially after everything she did. Forgiveness isn't about pretending bad things didn't happen. It's about deciding that the person who did them is capable of being better. I called Jennifer Walsh that afternoon and told her I'd sign the settlement agreement and the NDA. The paperwork was finalized within a week, and by June 1st, I was officially divorced after 43 years of marriage. The house felt strange with just me in it, but also peaceful. I started making changes, small ones at first, then bigger ones. I painted the bedroom a color I liked instead of the beige Evelyn had insisted on. I bought a new recliner that was more comfortable for my back. I started cooking meals I enjoyed instead of the ones she'd preferred. Slowly, the house started feeling like mine instead of ours. Brianna found her own apartment in July and started dating again in September. She'd met Robert through her therapist's recommendation. He was in a support group for people who'd been through difficult divorces. He was patient with her trust issues, understanding about her past, and treated her with the kind of gentle respect she deserved. I think I'm ready to tell you something, she said during one of our Sunday dinners in October. Robert asked me to marry him. She was cautious about trusting people, which I understood, but she was also stronger than she'd been before. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us teach us what we're really made of. I heard through mutual friends that Evelyn and Garrett had moved to Portland in August. The weekly hotel rates had gotten too expensive, and the small-town judgment had made it impossible for Garrett to find construction work anywhere in the area. Apparently, they'd decided to start over somewhere nobody knew their story, though I'd heard from Pete that even the move hadn't been smooth. Garrett's reputation had followed him through industry contacts. Part of me hoped they were happy. Part of me hoped they'd learned something from the pain they'd caused. But mostly, I tried not to think about them at all. On Christmas morning, Brianna came over and we made breakfast together. Just the two of us. It was quiet and peaceful and nothing like the big family gatherings we used to have, but it was real in a way those gatherings had stopped being. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked as we sat at the kitchen table with our coffee and scrambled eggs. "Really okay?" I looked around the kitchen where I'd eaten thousands of meals with Evelyn, where I'd fed Brianna breakfast before school for 18 years, where I'd planned to grow old with the woman I thought would be my partner forever. "Yeah," I said, and meant it.
I'm okay.
Different than I thought I'd be at this age, but okay. "Do you miss her?" "I miss the woman I thought she was. I miss the marriage I thought we had. But I don't miss living with someone who was lying to me every day." She nodded, understanding better than most people could. "I'm proud of you," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For telling me the truth, even though it was hard. For standing up for yourself. For showing me that sometimes love means making difficult choices." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you too. For being stronger than you knew you could be." We finished breakfast and opened the small gifts we'd bought each other. Then spent the day watching movies and playing cards like we used to do when she was little. It wasn't the Christmas I'd planned, but it was the Christmas we needed. That evening, as Brianna was getting ready to leave, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me over keeping the peace." After she left, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine and thought about the past year. The discovery, the confrontation, the divorce, the rebuilding. It had been the hardest year of my life, but also maybe the most honest. I'd learned that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you worst. I'd learned that love without honesty isn't really love at all. And I'd learned that starting over at 67 wasn't the end of the world. It was just the beginning of a different world. And different, I was discovering, didn't always mean worse. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. I'd kept his number after everything was over, and we'd exchanged a few messages over the months. "Saw your daughter's engagement announcement in the paper. Congratulations. Sometimes the good guys do win." I smiled and set the phone aside. The engagement announcement had run in yesterday's Spoken Review, with a beautiful photo of Brianna and Robert looking genuinely happy together. She'd wanted to make it official after Christmas, and I couldn't have been more proud of the woman she'd become through all of this. Sometimes the good guys do win. Sometimes people get second chances. Sometimes families get rebuilt in new and better ways. Outside, snow was starting to fall, covering the world in clean white silence. Inside, I was warm and safe and free from lies for the first time in years. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal and justice, please like this video and subscribe to His Sweet Revenge for more stories like this one. Let us know in the comments what you thought about Frank's choice to expose the truth, and whether you think he handled the situation the right way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.